Greetings, students, and welcome to this special edition of The Professor Travel Domestic Edition. I am your host, The Professor Travel, coming to you from Orange County, California. This is the website, the vlog, and the podcast that you come to in order to learn more about different travel destinations. This is where we come to as a community in order to discuss them. Hopefully, this will inspire you to travel more and ultimately to enjoy life more. Now, you can reach me on a variety of different social media platforms, starting, of course, with my website, which is at theprofessortravel.com. On YouTube, on Facebook, and now on TikTok, you can reach me at The Professor Travel. On Instagram, you can find me there at the underscore professor underscore travel. If you're a Twitterer, you can find me on Twitter at the Professor TR1. And then finally, if you're a blogger, you can find me there at theprofessortravel.blogspot.com. Today, I have a returning visiting professor to come to us today, Monique LeBlanc. How are you doing, Monique?
Doing really well, Scott. And actually, as you went through your introduction there, I mean, I already knew you were really cool after our conversation last time, but you're on TikTok now?
I am on TikTok,
You're
yes.
too cool now at this point.
So for the benefit of the students who may have not seen your previous video, can you talk to us a little bit about your educational background and maybe some places that you've traveled?
Yeah, absolutely. So I went to high school and grew up in the New England area of Rhode Island specifically. And then I went to college, my undergraduate days at Bucknell University in Pennsylvania, and then traveled around the country after that point. Actually went on a around the country 33-day trip with a college buddy, and had a great time driving all around the country and seeing different states and all the great cities. But I actually moved across the country to Flagstaff, Arizona, where I did my master's degree at Northern Arizona University. And I'm a college basketball coach, and that typically makes you travel around the country more than a lot of other industries. So yeah, I've traveled around and worked at some different universities, and I'm now the head coach at Brown University. So back to Rhode Island, back home. But currently, as of this very moment, living in Pelham, New Hampshire, and I've lived in New Hampshire for the past few years. And before that, I lived right over the New Hampshire border in Massachusetts. But where I was working last at Merrimack College in Andover, Massachusetts. So have lived either in New Hampshire or just miles from New Hampshire for the past 10 years almost. And so, yeah, excited to be here. Of course, we'll
And
keep
this
it
is
domestic. I have traveled internationally a little bit, but this is the domestic edition.
I was going to say, and you know what, this is a really important episode for you because this is going to be the last time you're in New Hampshire when we talk to you, correct?
Absolutely, yeah. But we are getting ready to move here by the end of the month. So excited to be still here in New Hampshire as we do this episode today.
Well, and that's what, again, the crust of this episode is on the great state of New Hampshire. We're going to talk a little bit about it. I don't know a lot about it, so I'm hoping that you can help to educate me and my students. So let's get started with a little bit of history of New Hampshire. Talk to me a little bit about what you were aware of.
Yeah, so kind of, last time when we talked about Rhode Island, we kind of led with, just the East Coast and how historical it is. And, we're talking back into the 1600s when we're talking about these states. So New Hampshire is certainly in that same category. And, my understanding is that it was established in 1623. And in 1629, it kind of got its name, New Hampshire, named after Hampshire in England. But then in 1641, Massachusetts gained control. And so 38 years later, New Hampshire got its independence back and broke away and became its own separate royal colony. But a cool thing about like that early history of New Hampshire, it was the first state to enact a law that if you had a town with over 50 people, you had to have a school in that town. So
Oh,
kind of cool little educational fact there about New Hampshire. And then, Franklin Pierce was our 14th US president, and he became that president in 1853. So some of our earlier history there. And then I know with recent history, I'm trying to think of big things that have happened in the state of New Hampshire.
well, from a political standpoint, I mean, New Hampshire is like one of those battleground states that
It
always
is.
seems to be on the map every time.
I was going to talk about how, the New Hampshire primaries is always a really big deal in any presidential elections, and to the point where I believe that earlier on it shared the same primary date with Minnesota and Indiana, who are, of course, bigger states and more heavily populated. But New Hampshire being such a battleground state, those states backed off of the date, and New Hampshire kind of has its own date. But,
Nice.
so that's pretty cool. But another like big thing that mostly the locals would be aware of, that was like a really historical time in New Hampshire, was we have this sort of monument. It's a natural, or had a natural rock structure.
The old man face.
The old man on the mountain. And
Yeah.
that fell down in 2003. It was like, it was terrible for the locals. It was just such an icon of our state. And so it was created naturally, and it collapsed naturally. It was like 5 different cliffs that, if you're looking at it from the north side, it was like the profile of an old man's face, and so that's how it got its name, the old man on the mountain, on Cannon Mountain there. So now it's not there, and it's kind of sad, but that was a really cool kind of claim to fame.
Well, it's nice to know that New Hampshire has a lot of things going for it in terms of its history, in terms of its politics, in terms of its food. I will get into that in a little bit too. But before we do that, let's talk about the beautiful geography. I mean, look at just how picturesque this amazing state is. Talk to me a little bit about the one thing I'm always curious about is what states surround you, because you're really in an encapsulated area and there's a lot of states in your general vicinity.
Yeah, New Hampshire is really beautiful. And like you just said, you can travel to New Hampshire pretty easily if you're anywhere within New England. And we're surrounded by many New England states. So to the east of New Hampshire, we are mostly sharing a border with Maine. But there is like an 18-mile stretch of Atlantic Ocean. So we do have some oceanfront in the state of New Hampshire.
Okay.
To the south is Massachusetts. And so, literally you could be on I-95 in Massachusetts and cross into New Hampshire and then be in Maine within 20 minutes. So like within 20 minutes, you touch 3 states.
Wow.
Just on that highway. And then to the west, we are bordered by Vermont. And then to the north, we are bordered by Canada, specifically Quebec. And so it's really neat. It's easy access to Canada, and in fact, there's a border crossing in the town of Pittsburgh, New Hampshire. It's like one of the most northern towns of New Hampshire, and I actually went through it last year. I was on a recruiting trip up to Canada, and on the way up, we crossed the border in Vermont.
Mhm.
That we were headed to Montreal, so that was kind of closer. And then on the way home, after we had gone to some different schools and recruited some different players, we were more east. So we came back through the border of Pittsburgh, New Hampshire.
Oh, very cool. Awesome. So let me also ask then in terms of the weather, because every time I see New Hampshire, it seems like it's really, really cold. I mean, like, but like how, but I mean, clearly from the last picture that we saw, and by the way, for my podcasters that are on there, you really have to come on to the YouTube channel in order to see some of these really gorgeous pictures of New Hampshire. Um, I mean, clearly there's obviously a really pronounced season series there. It looks like it's a gorgeous fall season. It looks like there's a gorgeous summer season. Talk to me a
Yeah.
little bit about how the seasons are up in that area.
Yeah, well, you nailed it with that, showing that previous picture. The fall, some of the long weekends that we have in the fall are really big, destination points for people to come up into New Hampshire and just leaf peep and look at the foliage. And there's, a lot of beautiful drives, that are known to be scenic routes that, if you want to see the leaves, drive the Kankamankas Highway in New Hampshire. It's a scenic byway that goes through the White Mountains, in different areas. So yeah, it's your typical 4 seasons. The fall is really so beautiful. The winter is wonderful because New Hampshire is a big skiing state, and so there's a lot of mountains and there's a lot of snow. And this picture here that we're looking at on the left, Mount Washington is in New Hampshire, which is the highest peak in in northern New England or in the northeastern United States. There's the presidential mountain ranges, and that's really fun to hike. But Mount Washington being the tallest, it actually has a nickname of the worst weather in the world. And that, I think, comes from, there was a 62-year stretch where the top of Mount Washington had the record for the highest wind gusts at like 231 miles per hour. Now that's since been broken, so it's now the second highest wind gust. But it's apparently, and I've never been to the top of Mount Washington. It's on my bucket list. And I'll be living in Massachusetts, still obviously really close to get up there. But I guess Mount Washington is actually used for, a training mountain for hikers that are looking to go do more serious hikes in the elements, such as, like an Everest.
Yeah.
But obviously there's a much easier egress on a mountain like Mount Washington. So I thought that was pretty cool to mention that, because I've never thought of it as terrible weather, but of course I'm sure at that elevation, certainly it could be. So, but then in the summer, it's a really popular place to go because it's not overly hot. It is hot, and there's the lakes region, so you have a lot of water sports and just that calm lake life that people really desire to slow down and get away. But it's also just got that sort of nice fresh air feel and that sort of thing. So I feel like every season is really successful season for New Hampshire.
Absolutely. Now, are there any like unusual weather phenomena that happen in the area? Because I mean, like with California, we have earthquakes, we have mudslides, we have like wildfires, we have a lot of different craziness, and it happens. But like, do you have like anything like tornadoes, hurricanes, blizzards, anything like that?
Yeah, so we definitely, the biggest weather phenomenons that New Hampshire has experienced are definitely blizzards. And there's been like some flooding. There's been some extreme floods at times. But funny, this just happened within the past couple of weeks. And, I live just a couple miles from Massachusetts. We're really tucked down here in southern New Hampshire. And on our kind of town Facebook page, there was, did anybody just feel that? Did you? And then sure enough, there was an earthquake in Massachusetts, and it was kind of felt all the way up here. It was in like southern Mass, over an hour away, but it was over 4.0. So that's pretty big for out here on the East Coast. And yeah.
So no. The reason I say that is because living in Southern California, unless it's a 6 something, I'm not waking up and it just doesn't knock me out of bed. I mean, I'll feel it, but I'll be like, okay, moving on. And so, but like when I was on the East Coast, I lived in Maryland for a little while. I mean, not as far east as you are, but when I was out there, we actually did have an earthquake. That was the earthquake that actually cracked the top of the George Washington Monument, and it was interesting because it was like, I think I felt something, and people were like running out of the building like a bomb had hit or something like that. It's a different perspective, I think, in terms of like if I talk to someone, for example, from Kansas or Texas, their view on tornadoes are like, we just listen to the siren and we just go underground. It's no big deal. I mean, for me, it's like, but how, like I freak out. So
you see that funnel shaped cloud and it's, what
bye.
Exactly.
So I'm like, now let's talk about the culture of your area. Now you have some amazing old churches there. Is there like a predominant religion in New Hampshire?
So that's what's really fascinating is the highest, I guess, like group percentage would be people that aren't religious.
Really?
No religion is 36% of the state. And then like after that, it's like Protestant and Catholic are pretty equal and make up most of the rest of the religious group of the state. So, but yeah, there are a ton of just old historical everythings, but certainly the churches and like covered bridges is a big thing. People drive around the state and look at different covered bridges too. But yeah, I was surprised to learn that about the religion here in New Hampshire.
Yeah. What about as far as the art community? You guys have a couple of really nice museums there. Any major artists or singers come out of that area at all that you're aware of?
So yeah, like Robert Frost, and most people are familiar with his poetry, is from New Hampshire. And trying to think of artists or singers. She's neither, but a lot of people are familiar with Sarah Silverman from.
Oh, the comedian. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And so, yep, she's from New Hampshire, had gone to high school, was in New Hampshire all the way up through her high school days before leaving for New York. So that's pretty cool. And then, New Hampshire is known for having like giant craft fairs, and it's known for our really like small, quaint town. So it's certainly a place that has a lot of galleries. Like you could make a trip out of going from, different art galleries in these different towns for sure.
Very nice. Now, as close as you are, especially to Quebec, English predominant in everything that you guys have there, or is there a little bit of a French influence that comes in from time to time?
Yeah, predominantly English because, as we said, Quebec borders us on the northern border, and there's not a really high population in northern New Hampshire. So,
Okay.
yeah, there's not a ton of French influence.
Okay, cool. Now, my favorite subject, diet
Same.
and food. So let's start off with apples, because apples are everywhere in New Hampshire, it would appear. I mean,
Yes.
from apple donuts to apple pie to apple cider to mead, to just everything. Are there like orchards of plenty, or what's the situation?
There are orchards of plenty for sure, and it's not just apples. A lot of the orchards then have you can go pick your own peaches and pick your own blueberries, and but certainly the fall just brings out groups of people that are coming up to visit the apple orchards, do their own apple picking. We although we are locals, we're not unlike any tourists. We went and bought way too many apples and had applesauce, apple crisp, anything you can make with apples, we're going to do it. So, yeah, definitely got to get up here and do some apple picking for sure.
Fantastic. And hunting's also a big thing up there. Venison being a large predominant thing in that area, I think, as well.
Yeah, yeah, it apparently is. And it's not something that I knew about until I was reading a little bit more on it. It's not something that, I see offered on menus a lot, but, yeah, hunting is big. And so that makes a lot of sense to me. Another thing is that, New England, with all of us being on top of each other, we also share some of the same sort of food claims to fame, I think. And so, Vermont, is also like maple syrup, but New Hampshire's like, hey, we do maple syrup too. And, I'm sure Maine, we all kind of, do our own thing with maple syrup. So New Hampshire is part of that. And seafood, that's a big deal everywhere in New England. Like I mentioned, we only have the 18 miles of coastline, but lobster rolls are a big deal here too. And so it's either, are you a traditional? So that means you're having it cold with mayo, like your lobster salad is made with mayo, or are you going for a hot lobster roll? And to me, that is a New Hampshire thing to do. You definitely want to go. Personally, it's literally just hot lobster with hot butter poured over it.
You're talking to my mom's language, because she comes from Malden, Massachusetts, and believe me, she's like lobster to everything if she can. So I get it. You were also making mention prior to us recording that there's a yogurt facility that's up in that area that's also pretty big too.
Yeah, so Stonyfield yogurt. It's funny because I wouldn't have known that was based right here in New Hampshire. But our daughter, our 5-year-old, is a super picky eater, always has been, and she loves Stonyfield vanilla yogurt to the point where if you try to give her a different brand of yogurt, like we're in a store, we're visiting my dad, and they didn't have Stonyfield. Oh, that's fine. We'll give her some of this other brand. She's gonna write. So it is pretty good. I've tried it. It's very delicious.
Awesome. Let's move on to sports and recreation, something that you're very familiar with.
Yeah.
So talk to me, like there are no specific teams, but it seems like everybody in the New England area is all about like the Patriots, or like it's a regional type situation, correct?
Right. Yeah. So it's always been so funny to me that you take a place like LA and they've got 2 basketball teams in one city, and
Yeah.
then in New England all of us have to share like one team. And so but that makes sense. We're small states up here. So yes, you're right. We're all New England Patriots, Boston Celtics, Boston Bruins, and Boston Red Sox. Right. So those are all of our regional teams. But specific in New Hampshire, we do have a AA affiliate for Major League Baseball, and the Fisher Cats, and they're with the Blue Jays organization.
Oh, okay.
The biggest thing is that we have NASCAR here. So we have the Loudon Speedway, in Loudon, New Hampshire. And so it's like the only NASCAR stop, in New England. So it's a pretty big deal. Definitely over there up at the Speedway.
Very cool. And
Yeah.
then, to the best of your knowledge, are there any state-specific holidays that are not federal holidays?
No, not to my knowledge. I don't think there are.
Okay, cool. Then let's move on to the population. Now, as I'm looking at the map here, it looks like, as you were making mention earlier, most of the northern area is pretty much remote, rural, but it looks like there's a lot of red in the southern areas.
Right.
There's that little 18-mile stretch that you were talking about of the water. I see it. But right in this area here that I'm circling on the map,
Yeah.
um, what is that population center? What are those two areas here?
So yeah, that's like Salem, New Hampshire, and Nashua is the like big red dot that's right on the Mass border there. And
Okay.
then like the other kind of like shaded like red and orange, I'd say that's like Salem. And then the next red dot up there, I would say is still in the middle. That second big red dot, yeah, just below that. That would be probably Manchester,
Okay.
and then Concord a little further up. So, yeah, it's funny. The population in New Hampshire has grown over the years, and what you've seen is in southern New Hampshire, people live over the border and still work in Boston. It's without traffic, it's about 35 minutes to get to Boston. So with traffic, it's going to be a lot more, but still certainly doable. And so, there's definitely been a big push into New Hampshire. And then like in northern New Hampshire, I think it just lacks an economic base to really sustain like a lot of full-time residents, but it's got a lot of people that have like their vacation homes up there and that sort of thing.
Okay, that's kind of nice. Although
Yeah.
again, like you were saying earlier, it just blows me away. Living in California, we have to plan if we want to go to another state because it is hundreds and hundreds of miles away. Like just to get to Vegas, it's 4 hours plus. And like here, if I'm looking at it, if you're just in this general area, I can go from Maine to New Hampshire to Massachusetts all within like an hour, maybe something like that. It looks crazy close.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you can hit a lot of cool spots. The beaches right there in New Hampshire are really, really popular. Hampton Beach is a really fun place. It's got, that nice little like kind of boardwalk feel and downtown feel with it. And then, you cross into Maine and okay, there's Portland, Maine. There's some really cool like coastal towns too. So yeah, it's a really neat area right there for sure.
And here are those lakes that I think you were talking about as well. The variety looks pretty nice actually in that general
Yeah,
area.
yeah. So there's like 273 lakes in the lakes region. The biggest one being Lake Winnipesaukee, and then Ossipee, and then also like right in that whole area is Squam Lake, which a lot of people would remember the movie On Golden Pond. That
Yeah.
was filmed at Squam Lake, so it's
Oh,
kind of claim to fame about Squam.
oh, beautiful.
Yep.
The names sound like they're all indigenous. Is that correct?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, that I would expect considering how old the state is. Yeah.
Yep.
Fantastic. Now, I was really impressed to find out how many different companies and different locations are in New Hampshire. Now, obviously, the colleges are a really big push there as well.
Yeah.
But then you also have Fidelity Investments, Easter Seals, Fredenberg, as you said, the Motor Speedway is in that area. C&S Wholesale Grocers, I'm not too familiar with. But then there's also I'm trying to remember the R that's on the bottom there. I think it's a pistol or rifle company. That's another thing that's up in that area. But I guess any other really big companies that come to mind that maybe I've left off this list.
Well, just two that I could think of. You mentioned Fidelity Investments, and so another kind of big one in that sort of industry, more insurance. Liberty Mutual has
Oh,
a really big, hiring base. I think they've got like 6,000 employees in New Hampshire. But you have up there Dartmouth College, the university, or the college that's located there. But also right by there is the Dartmouth Hitchcock Medical Center. It's a pretty big medical center in New England, and I think they've got like 7,000 employees, so it's a big deal.
I should mention that as I go through more of these states, it seems like a lot of the colleges have medical related associations, either learning hospitals
Yeah,
or something to that extent.
right.
One thing I did not mention on here, and I think it'll fall more under the education section as we go later on. Southern New Hampshire University is something that's actually been coming up over the last few years because of its online presence and its ability to expand it beyond the area. So I'm not sure how old that specific college is, but apparently it's been enough that, or it's large enough that we're hearing about it here on the on the West Coast, all the way from the East Coast.
For sure. I was going to mention that when we got to education, but like I remember about 6 or 7 years ago, we were actually on vacation in St. John. So, here we are, we're at this, beautiful island getaway. And, we flip on the TV to see if we can see what the weather's going to be like for the day. And there was a commercial for Southern New Hampshire University online. And I was like, are you serious? Like, we're all the way down in the Caribbean. We're commercial about snoo. So,
Well, there you go.
yeah.
As you continue to expand. Okay, so with the weather that you have up in your area, how are the roads? How is the transportation corridors? How is everything up in that area?
Yeah, I think because of the fact that we expect this sort of weather all the time, the roads are pretty good, and most people know to have four-wheel drive or not have just a front-wheel drive or a rear-wheel drive car, if anything, an all-wheel drive. But yeah, it's almost like you were saying before. Like in California, it's like an earthquake, like no big deal. Because we get so much snow, the roads are always, people are familiar with, okay, the roads look good now, and our roads are good might be still intimidating for somebody who's not used to driving in the snow, but they do a great job. um, and then we actually have a pretty major airport, Manchester Boston Regional Airport. I know it's regional, but you can definitely, like, it used to be that, oh, you would drive down to Boston if you were going anywhere, but
Yeah,
now,
because
like,
Logan's super huge. I mean,
right. But Manchester, you can definitely, places where you're going to have to get a connection anyways, you could definitely do, take the ease of flying out of Manchester. Really small airport, easy to park, easy to get through. So, personally myself, on some recruiting trips, I've enjoyed going out of Manchester, just because it's, I only have to get there, 45 minutes ahead of time.
it's much easier that way.
That's
Are
the
there
whole
any?
value with flying. I definitely, like to minimize my time at the airport. But anyways, maybe
I
next
can
time
understand.
we go.
No, I totally get it. And there's you guys also have like branches of a chain on the East Coast that I tend to like when I've done. So I used to be a regional training manager for another large university at one point, and so I would travel all over the East Coast, and they had legal seafood, which was a big thing for me to like
Yes.
stop in, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I
Yes.
get that it's like a little chainy, but I don't care because we don't have anything like that here on the West Coast.
Right. Yeah, that's like a chain that you can still count on getting like a great seafood. Like, of course people are going to say, well, you got to go to this local place, and that's the best lobster roll. But you can definitely count on getting really high quality seafood at Illegal Seafoods for sure.
Quite true.
Uh, yeah, and then we don't really have like trains. I know that there was a proposal for, I think it's being called the Capital Corridor. That was, the idea is to expand the access, of trains from our capital, Concord, to Boston by way of the other two big cities, which are Manchester and Nashua. But I don't think that, to my knowledge, that's been built yet. And I know the original goal was 2020, but I don't believe that that's actually in existence yet.
Got it. And then in terms of the tourism within your area, what are the big sites to see now, obviously?
Oh yeah. So tourism, like, I think the biggest things are people going up to the lakes. So over the summer, going up to get a lake house, Winnipesaukee. People also love to, like, the Appalachian Trail, of course, comes through New Hampshire. People
Oh,
like to go up and hike pieces of the Appalachian Trail, the Presidential Range, like I mentioned. There's lots of different outdoor things like that to do. Skiing is a big deal. So, like, over the winter season, there's definitely people that will go and rent places to, stay for the week and go skiing. And then there's actually, like, up in Conway, New Hampshire is probably the biggest town in northern New Hampshire, most populated, and they have like close access to a couple of cool places for families. And so one place is called Santa's Village, and it's actually open outside of the wintertime. It's open in the summer too, and it's like a small theme park, but it's super cute in the winter. If you can, ever get up there, and if you have kids, they love that. It feels like you're in the North Pole, really. And then there's another place that's called Storyland, and so that's where you have, again, there's little rides and stuff. It's really geared toward kids, but they've got like the old woman in the shoe and some of those older stories. So those
Nice.
are fun destination spots too.
Excellent.
Yep.
Okay, so the government of your specific state, on a federal level, it does appear to be mostly blue, and I wasn't sure on the local level, is it primarily the same?
Yeah. So,
Or
it's
is it mixed? I mean, I'm kind of confused why it's kind of a, battleground state.
yeah, it is mixed. I mean, I think that like in different elections, it has been, we've been red or we've been blue. And so I think, that it's unlike, our next door neighbor, Massachusetts, like it's blue, it's blue and it's going to be blue. And you kind of count on that. In New Hampshire, although we only have 4 electorals, and you don't think it makes that big of an impact, but it's interesting to see how this is a swing state, and it can go either way. So so that's really interesting. But something that New Hampshire in particular is known for is its women in politics. And so we actually currently have 3 out of the 4 delegates to the Congress. Both of our senators are females, and one of our congresswomen is a female. And so in 2012, it was all females across the
Oh,
board. And so, yeah, so I thought that was like really cool that New Hampshire is known for its women in politics.
was that the first state to ever do that? To have its entire delegation as female?
Yep.
That's
I think,
fantastic.
yeah, I think so. Of course, it's a little easier. We just have 4 people, but
Take it for what it is. I mean, seriously, that's amazing, though.
yep.
Now, in terms of resources, lumber, obviously on there, dairy products, maple syrup, as we already discussed. And one thing I noticed also is there's a variety of different nurseries that are in the general area that grow different types of floral arrangements and things like that that can ship out. Um, am I missing any major natural resources or anything that comes up that you think of?
Well, no, speaking of the nurseries, I know like mums are a big deal. So in the fall, a lot of people around here get their mums, and they're planted in their mulch beds, and their landscaping or hanging somewhere. So really some big and beautiful mums for sure. No, I think, like I believe that 15% of our, GDP here in New Hampshire is on like real estate, like people rental properties and things like that. So, it kind of goes back to tourism, but,
Yeah.
for the resources, I think you nailed it.
Are they mostly people that are on the East Coast that are going to those rental properties, or is it people coming from all over the states?
Yeah, it is a lot of people from the East Coast. There's a ton of people that, work in Boston and vacation on the weekends up in the Lakes region.
Oh, see, that's a nice, easy getaway. I like that.
Yeah.
And then over here, in terms of education, we've already talked about University of New Hampshire, Dartmouth, Southern New Hampshire University. Any other large universities that maybe I'm forgetting, or major colleges? Anything I'm leaving behind there?
The only one I thought of was, and we already talked about Southern New Hampshire Online, which around here, the letters SNHU, everybody calls it SNU.
Oh, we call it snoohoo on the West Coast, so I'm completely wrong on that, I guess.
Yep, SNU. So yeah, they've got a really large online presence. And then we had mentioned earlier when we were talking about the history of the state, Franklin Pierce, a
Mhm.
president, and there's actually a university in kind of like southwestern New Hampshire, Franklin Pierce University. So it's a smaller school for sure, but just thought it was cool because it was named after a president.
Very cool.
But yeah, you know what? This I didn't realize, but New Hampshire has the highest literacy rate in the United States.
Wow, what do you know what it is? Or
Yeah, 94%.
that's fantastic. Awesome.
That's great. And a big contributor to that is that our adult population has like the lowest percent of adults that don't meet the basic literacy baseline. So with that many adults that are passing, the literacy baseline, it makes sense that, obviously the kids grow up in that system.
And
Uh,
there's a huge enforcement mechanism there for the parents to say, hey, we want you to go to school, we want you to go to college or something like that. We have to get those basic skills out of the way first, and which means high school graduation rates are probably at a very strong level too.
I didn't look at that, but I would think.
Yeah, it would go hand in hand. I'm certain of that. And then finally, of course, safety and security. When I think of New Hampshire, I don't think of any major crimes that happen in terms of domestic terrorism or foreign terrorism or anything that's
Yeah.
kind of crazy. Anything pop up on your local news that's really kind of insane?
No, I'm with you on that, Scott. Nothing really has jumped out. And in fact, like, it feels like a really safe state, right? Like I just live here and feel like we're never hearing about too much. So I looked it up. I'm like, I wonder if this is true, or if, I'm in my bubble in southern New Hampshire here. But sure enough, we've got the third lowest violent crime rate. So yeah, it's a pretty safe place to be.
Well, that's fantastic. And again, Monique, I always appreciate you swinging by and helping me out and understanding the states. It's been wonderful speaking with you today. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge about New Hampshire. After you moved, hopefully we can follow up again. I'd love to have another conversation with you in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I was happy to be invited back, so thank you so much. I always enjoy these, and yeah, it was my pleasure to talk about New Hampshire. It's really beautiful. It's a wonderful place to visit. I think it's a really great place to decompress. Definitely, you'll feel re-energized, reconnected after visiting us here.
Well, again, thank you so much. And to my students that are out there, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to send me them via email if you'd like at scott@theprofessortravel.com. If you're on YouTube right now, please feel free to click that bell icon right at the top to be notified when new videos come out. If you haven't already done so, please feel free to subscribe. Hey, there's no charge for that. I promise we won't stalk you or anything. It's amazing. I appreciate it. And the channel does too. If you like this content and you like to continue to receive more of it, give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate that too. And finally, if you're on the podcast, please feel free to rate us, review us. We always appreciate the feedback. But until our next time, my name is Scott. I am the Professor Travel. Make every day a travel adventure. Take care, everybody. Bye bye now.